Hi, welcome to CEO Corner, and I am Giselle Michelle. Um, so this is just an introduction video that I am recording to the subject video that you're going to be watching in a second. Um, I recorded and published a video earlier this week or this past week called Tips for Managing Your Remote Workforce. And when I was thinking about it later, I realized that it was a little bit too long. And while the information was, I think, good and important, I also felt that the length of it might deter some people from watching it. And so I went back, I pulled it and re-edited it. And so I am now republishing it with this introduction. Um, with this introduction so that you know what happened. If you happen to see it, the a couple of people had already watched the other one, but if you happen to see it, then you'll know what happened. Um, the reality of having a remote workforce and remote workers is not new, but the numbers I think are what have been challenging, and particularly for most companies that haven't necessarily been designed as remote workplaces. Now, even before the pandemic, about a third of employees were already working remotely in some way, shape, or fashion. But now we have this larger group, and that we have to consider to do that. And as the pandemic is still playing itself out, people are more reluctant to go back to full time, and employers are having to consider the idea of flexibility. And when the video I made last time was around the great resignation, and part of managing the great resignation was my recommendation that employers become more flexible. So part of that flexibility is to consider this notion of the demand or the requests and desires of workers to want to work remotely. Now, there are challenges that are going to have to be considered. We're going to talk about that. One of the articles that I'm going to use to guide our conversation is a Harvard Business Review article called A Guide to Managing Your Newly Remote Workers. Now, this article was published at the very beginning of the pandemic last year, published in March of 2020. And it's written by Barbara Larson, Susan Vroman, and Erin Makarius. Now, some of their recommendations were really more pertinent to kind of the immediacy of the turnaround that we had to do to work to work virtually or remotely rather. But some of the fundamentals are still relevant, and so we're going to be talking about that, and I'm going to be breaking down some of the concerns as well as some of the recommendations for really being successful or better at it. Right? Please consider sharing, subscribing, liking. I really want to continue growing this channel and making these videos for you, and creating a sense of community in this space. So please share, like, subscribe, and click on the notification button so that when we do drop a video, as we're sort of finding our footing in terms of the times, that we're going to be dropping videos, so that you'll be notified immediately when we do. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye-bye. Check out the video that's coming up. According to the guide of to manage your newly remote workers, and at this point, to manage your remote workers, we're going to say that one of the challenges that it can be faced, right, with respect to remote workers, is the absence of face-to-face supervision. Now, this can be problematic both for the supervisor and for the employee. For the supervisor, oftentimes it's an issue of, a kind of style of management, right? There are people for whom it is better to see the employee, their direct reports, busily at work, um, getting the project and getting the work done. If they don't see it with their eyes, if they feel that somehow the employee will be slacking in their duties, will be derelict in their duties. And so the need then to be kind of that more hands-on manager is there. I have to say that for me, my management style is much more lax than that, because I think it's part of the growth of the employee is that you allow them to find their way, to find the process of how to get from point A to point B, right? That's part of the building block of that professional development. As long as I make sure that one, they understand that there is an expectation, right? So if, for example, let's say that there's a deadline, right? Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there's a deadline, right? And so it's my job to make sure that they understand what the task at hand is, what the expectation is, to answer any question, and to be available to answer questions after they go back to wherever it is that their workplaces. Secondly, to ensure that they have the capacity and the tools that they need to complete and that work that needs to be presented at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. And the rest of it rather is up to them, right? I'm personally not invested in the process, because I think that's where the value added of that person comes in, right? That's why you hire people. That's why you bring them in, so that their own talent can shine, right? That's part of that process. It's in the process. It's in the making of the sausage, as it were, right? That their own professional development gets built and hardened, right? And so again, when we look at a remote work environment, there are any number of reasons, right, why a person might need that kind of remote work environment. There's a certain flexibility. They may need to have, to take a few hours to run to a doctor's appointment, or take a parent or child to a doctor's appointment, or to go and I don't know, do laundry, to do any number of things that have nothing very specific to do with their work product. However, recognizing that there's a deadline on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, it's up to them to decide whether they want to work, at 9 o'clock on Monday evening, or at 6 o'clock on Monday morning, right? To make sure that we hit that deadline at 3 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. And for me, as long as we hit that deadline, we're good. Right. And I think and for a lot of employees who require that kind of the flexibility of working from home, there's an understanding that as long as they hit the mark, it's good. The other part is that lack of face-to-face supervision is not a one-sided coin, because, in other words, it's not just the employer or the supervisor who can be troubled by that, right? It can also be the employee who's troubled by it, because for some people, it's important for them to be seen to be working, right? It's important for them to be seen, to to show that they're sort of hard at it, and just kind of nose to the grindstone and getting the work done, and part of their compensation part of them feeling good about themselves is when they know that their supervisor sees how much work, how much effort they go through to get a project done, right? They can see, hey, you see what I'm doing? Do you see what I'm doing? Right? So for that person, it may be problematic to have a work from home schedule, right? If that is a required thing. Say some departments have gone fully, on site for rather remote for. In fact, my sister works for a law firm, and her whole department now has gone virtual, right? And you could still go back to the office, but it's kind of like, you sort of have to call in to like a hotel to kind of make sure that an office is available for you for that day if there's a meeting or something or of the sort. And so if you want to have FaceTime with your other colleagues, sometimes because for some people it's just easier for them, they're more used to working at the office. So this is kind of how you do it. So it's not just a one size fits all kind of strategy there. But so it's just important to recognize that within a remote workforce environment, you have the lack of face time can be problematic both for the employee and for the supervisor. The other issue that could be problematic is as you're sort of managing folks to, again, to ensure that people have all of the information they need, both in terms of what's going on in the organization, as well as what is required for them to be successful and effective at their jobs. Another issue that people can run into is this idea of social isolation, right? We are social beings. Being at the office, challenging though it can be sometimes, especially if we don't get along with colleagues, if we have a terrible commute, we have a cubicle where really there's no real sense of privacy, et cetera, et cetera. The flip side of that is that you have the opportunity to create a sense of camaraderie with your colleagues, right? You have a sense of community that can be created. You have that face time that we were talking about before, and where a manager supervisor could see you and gauge certain things about you, or you're having a conversation, that is spontaneously happening, organically happening in some hallway that leads to the answer to some important problem, right? Some new innovation or some promotion possibility, right? So these things are harder to happen when you have a remote work environment, right? So this idea of social isolation, when the person feels that they're working by themselves, they're not a part of a group or a core of people, right? They're just working over there. It's as a manager, as a supervisor, it's important to keep those things in mind as part of your new management style, right? People may have distractions at home. Again, I think this issue of distractions at home was definitely much more the case when people first started to go, to have to the stay at home mandates, right? So we weren't prepared yet at home for that kind of intense being at home kind of culture, right? Because not just were we at home, our children were at home. They couldn't go necessarily outside. They had to to do their schoolings online. As a parent, you may have had to also make sure that they were okay to do that because it was new for them as well. your pets were at home, you name it, everyone was at home. So there was a lot of distraction, and oftentimes then going to do getting the work done required people to have much longer hours, right? Because it's when things started to calm down that people could then focus on the work at hand, particularly if there wasn't a deadline. Um, that had to be addressed, but simply the day to day. So again, as supervisors, it's a part of your job is about helping people manage, right? Manage their environment, manage their time, in a way that perhaps you may not have had to do when people were at the office. So, what do you do? How do you create success as a manager, as a supervisor? How do you create success with a remote work environment? One is to, as the article suggests, is to establish a structured daily check-in. So this is something that I used to do. Um, and with my team, and the article suggests that this is done first thing in the morning as people start getting to the office. I think it depends, frankly, on, times, issues around time zone, issues around any number of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be done first thing in the morning, but it does have to be done, right? I used to do mine right after lunch, and then at one point we used to sort of, we based it on the Eastern Standard Time. So, so again, different people had lunch at different times. Again, time zone is an issue depending on what your team looks like. So encouraging people, if they had to, they certainly could bring their lunch, or but having this. So I'm going to go back to this issue of intentionality. We talked about this idea that people may be feeling a sense of isolation if they're working from home. So all of this is about the soft part of management, right? Emotional intelligence. So helping people to feel connected, helping them to feel that, again, that they're a part of a team, a part of an organization, a part of a culture, right? In order for you to do that as a manager, it's important to create a space and allow for people to tell you about themselves, about what's going on in their world. So in designing these meetings, intentionally creating the space where people can talk about what's going on at home, what's going on with their lives, what's going on with this kind of new work model, so that people can feel that it's not just the work that's important, that in fact they are important. Another important thing to consider about in creating responses for success in this kind of new remote environment is to ensure that we use every kind of communication there is possible for the business to use and for the team to use, right? For example, and use technology as a resource, right? So you have this daily meeting where people can talk, where people can ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes there are projects that are going on. There are deadlines that are coming up. There are critical issues that arise where people really need your attention immediately. So basically, it's important to let them know how they can reach you, right? So the meeting in the morning is for broader questions, or sometimes when something sort of comes up right in the moment. But then secondly, people need to know, okay, if something comes up and they really critically need your attention, immediate attention, or to a question or a response, what is the best way to reach you? Is it better to chat? Is it better to text? Is it better to give you a quick call? Um, or is it email? You may decide email is is for kind of the longer term stuff. Like if you don't really, because for some people, they get so many email during the course of the day that if something is urgent, that is not the best way to reach them, right? So you then let people know that. The important thing here is, again, communication is about setting expectations, right? So let your employees know, if you need to reach me for something that's important, that requires my immediate attention and immediate response, the best way to do it is either through some sort of internal communication system. A lot of companies have, IT systems where you can have chats. You can do, or you can even do is, set up a quick Zoom, or I don't want to keep promoting Zoom as such, but any kind of virtual environment where the person can know, okay, can we quick text, can we set up a quick, virtual meeting, or can we set up a quick call? I need your attention on this, et cetera, et cetera. So all those things are important to manage expectations, and they are important to continue kind of providing a sense of continuing support to your employees, so that they don't feel that they're in it alone and by themselves. There are two more responses to help and manage remote workforces. One are the rules of engagement, and finally, creating social interactions. Again, I'm going to sort of pull those together. The rules of engagement, again, are about this idea of really kind of reinforcing that notion of emotional intelligence, right? Like, how do we connect with each other? How do we communicate? What do we do depending on what the priority of the issues are, right? Again, it's to one of the challenges, particularly if companies, as most companies were, in person, and perhaps may now be going partly online, partly virtual or remote, or wholly so for the next while, depending on what is going on, frankly, with the pandemic, and as of this video recording, the Delta variant is going on fairly strong, and is getting back, getting a lot of attention. So there's still a sense of uncertainty in the world. There's still a sense of uncertainty that's causing people to really be reluctant about going back into the office. So again, remote work is probably here to stay for a little while. So rules of engagement then around helping people still feel that they are part of the culture of the organization, that they are part of the core of their team, or of the organization, depending on how big it is, right? And how they were feeling connected before, right? And so the idea of living your values, right? This is a time for that. This is a time that is being challenged um, because it's so much easier to think we are actually living our values as a family. We are a family. I went to get my tires fixed the other day, and right on the wall was a credo by which it's a company that has several several offices, and they said we treat each client, each customer as if they were a member of our family, right? These are values, right? That these are credos that create organizational culture. Every company has them. It's easier to have those credos become a lived expression of the company, right? If people are going there in person. It's much harder to do that when they are in a remote setting. So as the supervisor, your job really is going to be tested around ensuring that organizational values and organizational culture remains alive or becomes enlivened. And finally, one of the ways to do that is, we heard a lot of talk some months back about, Zoom social hours and those kinds of things. And so this idea of creating remote social interactions, right? So companies would send, like a pizza party, right? You would, particularly during um, the the closing down of the stay-at-home mandates, right? Companies would send care packages to, like a pizza to each person and of the team, for example, and then or with beer or wine or juice or water, whatever it is that people sent, and you have a designated time where everybody agreed that we would meet online or virtually, and then just kind of open up and just kind of talk and just really be informal and fun loving and share our lives with each other. Now, and frankly, there are great benefits to that. So there's the benefit of the event and the activity for for the company, for the staff, but also, frankly, you're supporting oftentimes a local small business, right? Because that small business is now, being used to um, to get the pizza order over there, or whatever food it is over to whatever per person's house, right? And that, emphasizing those kinds of things, because people like the idea of being a part of a chain of doing good. So a company who does stuff like that and is intentional about it, right? It's not just, yes, we're doing this but really ensures that, yes, we are supporting small businesses as we're doing this. So there's a double benefit to this activity. People get excited about that. And then there are any number. I'm going to cite one more. One of the things that's also happening is that people are able to take classes, virtual classes together. So it's not just about, having wine and cheese or pizza, but people can take classes on, learning a new skill together as a group, gardening, or um, um, creating um, creating new drinks, right? And etc. I mean, there are any number of them, right? So you send uh, uh, a basket to people's home, and you learn how to make these fancy, martinis or cocktails or mocktails that people can enjoy together. So all of that also again supports a small business, right? So there are any number of ways that this kind of providing management and support to employees in a remote setting can become successful. Not every it doesn't make sense in every environment, but really the research is not yet quite in yet on that. But for those environments that are taking up the gauntlet and are supporting both employees and themselves, it does make sense. It does create an opportunity for work to continue to happen in a way that supports um, talent, in a way that helps companies keep talent, and in a way that helps you as the company keep your arms around, the demands of managing a workforce that is not exactly down the hallway from you. So I would love to hear what your company is doing and how it's evolving in this space. Please drop a comment and let me know what you think about this video. Share, like, subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm trying to really provide some information that's helpful for you as managers, as leaders, as company owners. So please let me know whether this resonates for you, and it's been an absolute pleasure to once again come and provide you with this bit of information. So thank you, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.